Good evening. Welcome to the 25th Annual St. Paul Heritage Preservation Awards. We're here to recognize our city's outstanding architectural and cultural heritage, along with the people and projects that over recent years have protected that heritage. Thank you for coming. I'm Richard Dana, and I'm chair of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission.
And I'm Bill Madden with the American Institute of Architects St. Paul Chapter, filling in for Sarah Gaetti, our president. And each of our two organizations come together to call for nominations of awards, deliberate, and then plan to celebrate those excellent achievements. The St. Paul AIA is composed of about 400 members, and we promote architectural leadership, network, and outreach opportunities for our members. We hold what we call Food for Thought program events throughout the year, typically around the lunchtime hour, free box lunch, but sometimes in the evenings. In fact, last year I think our most successful event was happy hour at the Bang Brewery. But with that, we also sponsor scholarships to the University of Minnesota College of Design and the St. Paul Prize Competition for emerging young professionals. So the Heritage Preservation Commission Awards are selected by a jury comprised of architectural historians, architects, building preservationists, HPC staff. I'm proud to be one of their jury members this year.
In a moment, I'll introduce our welcoming speaker to kick the event off. But first, I'd like to thank the St. Paul AIA and the members of the St. Paul AIA who are here, and thank them for this long-standing partnership, which is how we're able to do this. And I think it's there is a tingle about this being the 25th one of these. It's not something we just started doing, and preservation has been an important part of life in St. Paul for a lot of years. In terms of that partnership, our people who are members of the AIA, would you stand just for a moment? Let's see how many of you are here. Thank you, and thank you for the contribution that you make to the quality of the work that gets done. I'd also like to see how many of my fellow commissioners are here. Would the members of the St. Paul Heritage Commission, Heritage Preservation Commission, please stand? Thank you for your service and for being part of this protectors of our environment. I'd especially like to thank my fellow commissioner, Diane Trout-Ortel, without whose superb assistance the event would not have come off as smoothly as we hope it will. So thank you, Diane. The commission itself is staffed by city employees who are part of the Department of Planning and Economic Development. They're really what makes the preservation effort hang together and be as professional as it is. So I'd like the permanent staff members and the interns to stand so you know who they are. Mary Larkin and AIA staff who were instrumental in having this happen. Did Mary come in? Mary's still upstairs waiting for my wife to finally get here so she can come downstairs. All right. So I'd also like to mention particularly Sala Architects and the Blue Stem Heritage Group because they've agreed to partner with the event as sponsors, and that's really an important piece. And it's that kind of partnership that, again, that word partnership keeps coming up. The partnership with AIA, the partnership with Blue Stem, the partnership with Sala. And that I think that's the key word when I look at our program tonight and who's getting awards. And partnership seems to be what preservation has really been about this year. I mean, I guess it's always about that. But tonight we're looking at two brothers who partnered on a project, and pulled it off better than their parents had ever hoped they would. We're looking at a community development corporation that's able to partner with a number of different organizations to be able to achieve what may look like a single incident, but is part of a much wider program. We get to something as big as the SCHMIDT Brewery project and all the partners that are involved in having that happen. We're recognizing Weiming Lu, and I think of the partnerships that were started back in the early days of the Latimer administration, so that those partnerships bore fruit and really put St. Paul in a position to have a preservation movement that was going forward. So we have an incredible legacy, and it's due to a lot of partnership. A year ago, I started my address referring to the editorial in the New York Times back 50 years ago when the train station was demolished. The words that will be remembered more by the buildings we destroy than the ones that we erect. And I think that what we're about tonight is so much more about acknowledging what we're preserving, what we're having be part of the fabric of the city. So it's a pleasure to still be part of this movement. Now it's my pleasure to introduce St. Paul's Deputy Mayor, Kristen Beckman, and it's another one of those serendipitous things that tonight is the first anniversary of her being Deputy Mayor in St. Paul. She did do a little stint in Minneapolis getting Betsy Hodges established in office before she said she'd come back here and do important work in an important place. And Kristen also had the history with Habitat and with other organizations. Again, I think saying that how partnerships work in the community is how we get things done and why someone would choose to live and work here. So it's my pleasure to introduce Deputy Mayor Kristen Beckman.
Thank you. It feels like a fitting place to be to celebrate my first anniversary in this job. And for those of you who don't know, Mayor Coleman goes through a deputy about once a term. So I am the third deputy mayor. I am trying to fill Paul Williams' big shoes. And today I considered doing a victory lap around the third floor, but thought I would contain my enthusiasm for tonight. There are three things when I think back over this past year that I knew about St. Paul, but I came to know deeper. I have met so many people over this last year who care so much about St. Paul, the friends of our libraries, our parks, our river, our history, our culture, our buildings. And so to be here tonight with all of you who value that so much feels a very fitting, circle to come around. I also have seen the partnerships that you talk about. It is amazing, particularly the public-private partnerships. We have so many individuals and corporations and just sort of civic boosters who want to be a part of making our city better and, bringing the soul to it, as the mayor says. And so I'm really grateful to be here with you tonight on that. And I think, the last piece over this last year, I've thought a lot about our built environment. The mayor, Gil Penalosa, was here about a year ago now for the placemaking residency, and he talked a lot about 8 to 80 and creating a city where you can live and work and bike and walk, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old. And so this year has just been consumed with thinking about how do you build parks? How do you build streets? How do you do your sidewalks? How do you do your buildings? And all of that built environment, to be able to move through our historic neighborhoods, to be able to see things and just be that much closer to it and to have a greater value for it. So for all of you who think about our built environment, whether it's a porch or a sidewalk or a large building like Landmark Center, thank you very much, because you have preserved sort of that soul and that heart and that vibrancy to our city that now is turning out to be an economic development tool, that's turning out to be, making us a destination. It is, we are celebrating being over 300, 300,000, thank you, residents in the city of St. Paul for the first time, and we are trending, and it feels great to be growing, but not growing at the expense of our history. So thank you to all of you who have preserved that for so long. I really appreciate being here tonight on my first anniversary and celebrating that with all of you.
Tonight, we're honoring 10 of the most noteworthy contributions to heritage preservation of the past couple of years. These are contributions that embody the many values of preservation, values that strengthen our sense of history, spur investment and jobs in our community, and keep buildings from our landfills. These 10, however, are particularly strong examples of what we can do to preserve St. Paul's history and heritage.
Awards fall into 5 categories. Awards for restoration are reserved for projects that bring buildings back to a specific time in their history, often but not always near the time of initial construction. Awards for adaptive reuse and rehabilitation require the preservation of significant historic features, but allow alterations to accommodate a new use or changing human requirements. The Stewardship Award recognizes outstanding efforts toward the long-term maintenance and preservation of a historic property. An award for community education goes to a project, organization, or individual making a significant contribution to the recognition of the city's cultural heritage and its value as an educational tool. Finally, we recognize organizations or individuals that have made an impact on preservation in St. Paul.
So I don't usually like to read, but there's so much information in here, and I'm in front of a crowd who would know if I said something wrong. So I'm going to read it because it is fitting that we begin this evening by recognizing the stewards who maintain St. Paul's Landmark Center. As many of you would agree, this is the beginning of St. Paul's preservation story. Constructed over a period of 18 years from 1892 through 1910, this imposing civic building served as the federal courthouse, customs house, and post office for the upper Midwest, until it was declared surplus property by the federal government in 1969. This declaration came only 3 years after the nation's passage of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966, which established the National Register of Historic Places. The Minnesota Historical Society took charge of listing the building to the National Register, which was the first state such designation, which provided time for a local group of citizens to save it from the wrecking ball and develop a viable plan for transforming the landmark into a cultural center. Here's my own editorial comment. I am so glad that they did that. It is unthinkable to think about Rice Park and how all of that wonderful space there would not exist without the landmark as a cornerstone. Although partial restorations were undertaken in 1973 and 1976, this extremely large and complex building has required ongoing repairs. Increasingly concerned about the condition of the roofs on both towers and exterior masonry, Ramsey County and Minnesota Landmarks retained collaborative design group to prepare design documents. The team also compiled a report that detailed the Landmark Center's entire construction history, as well as its current condition. Creative research methods include zooming in into photographs dating back to the late 1800s to determine original details. The technique led to the discovery that current mortar joints did not match the beaded joints used during the original construction. Thanks to this discovery, Landmark Center is actually more historically accurate than it was prior to the restoration. Completed work included the repointing of the entire exterior, repair of the stone masonry, and replacement of the clay tile roofs on both towers. Also included in the project was the restoration of the copper-clad penthouse structure on the north tower and the replacement of copper sheet metal. With minimal disruption to the neighborhood and the building occupants, state-of-the-art design and construction secured the future of this important building while respecting its original appearance. So, a restoration award goes to Minnesota Landmarks in recognition of their ongoing commitment and leadership in the restoration of the Landmark Center, truly St. Paul's preservation success story. to Ramsey County in recognition of their ongoing commitment and leadership in the restoration of the Landmark Center. Who's going to accept it from Ramsey County? To the Collaboration Design Group in recognition of their architectural evaluation, documentation, and thoughtful design solutions in restoring the Landmark Center. And finally, to the Building Restoration Corporation. Oh, not finally. And to Building Restoration Corporation. And finally, to Dalco Roofing and Sheet Metal Inc., their skillful craftsmanship and creativity in restoring the Landmark Center.
I'm Amy Mino. I'm the director for Minnesota Landmarks. We're very honored to receive the award tonight. And I just want to say our partners, Ramsey County, couldn't be here tonight, so I'm representing our project team, our project partners there. And I just want to mention that, sometimes a project like this where you're not actually building a new building or taking off something and making a dramatic change isn't always the easiest one to say yes to, but the county stepped up. The Ramsey County Board made $3.5 million available to us to do this project, and it's so important to the Landmark Center for its future. 25 miles of masonry that they tuck pointed, and 2 tower roofs over 110 years old, and how important that is to the future of the building. So it will be here for the next 100 years. So I just want to mention that. And then also that there was also an arts and cultural legacy funding a little bit in the project as well through the Minnesota Historical Society for some of the copper work, which was equally important. The copper on the building had been in there again another 100 years, and it was time to replace it. So I'm happy to say the building is buttoned up for the next 100 years so that people can enjoy it into the future.
My name is Craig Milkert. I'm with Collaborative Design Group, and I just want to say we're very honored to get this award because this is what we love to do. But the real award really should go to Minnesota Landmarks and Ramsey County. They're the ones that did the hard work of getting the funding to make it happen, and they really had the passion to save the building, and I want to thank them.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Russ Stark. I'm the City Council President here in St. Paul. Great to be here and to see so many folks out celebrating preservation. And like the Deputy Mayor, I'm going to end up reading because there's a lot of detail here that I would get all of it wrong. So I'm going to be presenting 1936 Summit Avenue, the Victor INGEMANN House. This 1912 Arts and Crafts Tudor Revival house designed by Victor INGEMANN is known for its intricate brickwork on the outside, but on the inside that same level of intricacy was hidden behind sheetrock and a marble slab. At some point the living room fireplace had been modernized, and when David Hyde Design Studio was called upon to furnish the living room, they thought something special might be hiding behind the marble. Their suspicions proved correct, and when the original brick and plaster relief panel were discovered, the owners were convinced that the room needed more than just furniture. A fireplace rehabilitation was in order. The collaborative efforts of mason, cabinet maker, and fabricator implemented a design for this fireplace project that reused as much original material as possible. The mason, Macmillan Masonry, cleverly turned the damaged brick around to expose the original finish. Fabricator, St. Paul Fabricating and Decorating, reworked the damaged face of the plaster relief panel, using an image found in an old catalog offering the piece for $5 in 1914. Historic lighting was also sourced, restored, and installed by Lightworks, and woodworking and finishing was completed by Frost Cabinets and Biggerstaff Studios. Since the rest of the house retains a high degree of historical integrity, the previous fireplace alterations were noticeably out of place. Their commitment to high standards of design, accuracy, and craftsmanship was brought together with the extensive efforts of the design team and the contractors. So the A Restoration Award goes to owners Derek Gerdy and Allison Hoffman, in recognition of their commitment to sensitively restore and maintain the integrity of the Victor Ingemann House at 1936 Summit Avenue. And to David Hyde Design Studio, in recognition of their commitment to architectural investigation and restoration of the historic fireplace in the Victor Ingemann House.
The project, we had no idea that it would turn out this way. We knew that it needed work. There was a piece of sheetrock, and lo and behold, behind that, damaged plaster relief. And David's team really pulled together an expert group of craftsmen to partner with us and steer us in the right direction. And we're very appreciative of the recognition. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Linda Youngworth. I'm a member of the Tri-Area Block Club in St. Paul's North End neighborhood. And our group initiated and for over 20 years advocated for what was then the Trillium Project and is now the Trout Brook Nature Sanctuary. So this award is for community education, and it is on the for the publication, The History of the Trout Brook Valley. The history of the Trout Brook Valley was developed as a public education tool to help inform and inspire residents, artists, park designers, and civic leaders about the cultural and environmental history of Trout Brook and the North End. Based on extensive research and oral histories, this 35-page document traces the history of the valley from the Dakota inhabitation to the period just before the initial development of a new park. Photos, illustrations, and numerous maps detail the change as the valley shifted from its natural state to its use as an agricultural area, to its transformation into a railroad line and yard, and then a freeway corridor. The history of the Trout Brook Valley is intended to form the basis of new interpretive panels that will be installed when the new Trout Brook Park is fully opened this summer, which, by the way, the grand opening is May 30th. The project represents an ideal model for high-quality historic research informing the development of a public park. The St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department commissioned this piece in order to bring attention to the history of a valley that has been literally buried by development and unseen for generations. Rather than treating history as an optional add-on to the end of a project, the Parks and Recreation Department requested completion of this document prior to design development. The research for the project uncovered a variety of previously unknown documents, photos, and stories, and the resulting knowledge helped guide the final development of the park and its interpretation. The project was particularly meaningful to the North End, an area of the city whose history is very often overlooked. Additionally, it highlights the importance of documenting and preserving historically significant landscapes. A community education award goes to St. Paul Department of Parks and Recreation in recognition of their commitment in commissioning the history of the Trout Brook Valley to serve as a public education piece and inspiration to artists, and to Blue Stem Heritage Group in recognition of their expertise in researching, authoring, editing, and publishing the history of the Trout Brook Valley, which weaves together social, cultural, and environmental history. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Brien Wagner, principal at Blue Stem Heritage Group, and I am so excited and so honored to receive this award. I really appreciate it. And the fact that this was introduced by Linda Youngworth is incredibly meaningful to me. She actually is the seed that germinated this entire project. She and her neighbors in the area around Trout Brook, which you may not have gathered, is just south of Maryland and north of the Capitol, where 35E is being shifted over a little bit. She and the neighbors there advocated for the preservation of this area and the transformation into a park. And because of active citizens like her who believed in maintaining and preserving open space, and in fact returning the stream, which had been buried to a sewer, this project was able to happen. I also really do appreciate Kathleen Anglo at the City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department. She was the one who hired us. So we just really have enjoyed this project, and we're very glad that it received this recognition. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Mai Chong Zhang, Legislative Aide to Councilmember Dai Tao. Unfortunately, Councilmember Dai Tao cannot be here tonight, so I'm here, but I'm absolutely honored to be here. I just recently closed on a house in Dayton's Bluff on a 1900-year-old, built in 1900 year. So I really appreciate it with the work that's being done and the work that you all continue to do with preserving the housing stock that we have here in St. Paul. It's so precious, and it really defines who St. Paul is, because if you ask anyone where they're from, they will not say St. Paul, but then they will say the neighborhood. So thank you, and happy Preservation Month. So to begin, I will also read this off with 614 Dayton Avenue. It was designed by architect John Coxhead. The John and Harriet Stevens house is a distinctive Victorian house featuring rectangular turrets with rounded corners. An early owner was John F. Stevens, the chief engineer of the Panama Canal and the Great Northern Railway. Over the years, the three-story home had been chopped up into separate apartments. Previous owners had torn down walls, and most of the woodwork had been removed, and the fireplace chimney was crumbling. Only the kitchen, which had recently been updated, was in good shape. Robert Hengelfelt of Hengelfelt Restorations, who has been reviving turn-of-the-century houses since the mid-1990s, took on the challenging task of restoring this house. An 1890s photo of the home's exterior from the Minnesota Historical Society became an invaluable blueprint for the restoration work. Hengelfelt acted as the general contractor for the renovation, and he also did most of the work himself, along with the help of his brother, Tom Hengelfelt, who did much of the millwork. On the exterior, rotted siding was replaced, decorative shingle work and Victorian ornamental arches on the second floor porch were recreated. By the time the project was finished, just about every surface had been painted or refinished, including the inlaid wood floors. Not all of the work was cosmetic. It was discovered that the second floor's sagging floors required major and costly structural work. From the basement of the attic, an example of the unpleasant surprises that rehabbers often encounter. The house at 614 Dayton is well over 100 years old, but its future is now secured. As always, Hengelfelt's goal was to make the house functional for today while respecting the time it was built. Now, I'm pleased to present to Robert Hengelfelt, in recognition of his commitment and quality craftsmanship, restoring the John and Harriet Stevens house at 614 Dayton Avenue back to its Queen Anne grandeur. And also to Tom Hengelfelt, in recognition of his masterful production of millwork and restoring the John and Harriet Stevens house at 614 Dayton Avenue back to its Queen Anne grandeur. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks to the AIA and the HPC and everyone at the HPC, particularly for their support. The history of this house is really a lot greater than myself or any of us who worked on it, and there's quite a list of people. I won't mention them all. I'll just say keep an eye on it, because I think things will continue to progress there. We sold the house recently, and the new owners are pretty excited about it. So.
Located in the historic Ramsey Hill neighborhood, the three-story Georgian Revival House at 488 Holly Avenue was built in 1896 for a wealthy banker. By the time Bill Gray moved into the house in 1978, unsympathetic remodels had obscured its gracious appearance. The house had changed from a lovely home with wood siding, attractive trim, and a generous front porch spanning the width of the house into an odd-looking conglomeration of wide asbestos siding and bizarre features such as small front porch that was off-centered. After extensively renovating the interior, Bill tackled the exterior of the house. His goal was to restore it to as close as to the original as he could. As his main reference, he used a photo from the front of the house taken in 1942. He also used information gleaned from the structure itself. For example, the second floor veranda on the back of the house, which had not been sided in asbestos, revealed a corner pillar from which he was able to gather some precise trim detail and measurements. He also gained information from things like the original front porch footings and the notches on the pilasters from the original porch. The final product is a house that is no longer the oddest and ugliest house on the block, but is now a showplace that enhances the neighborhood and complements the historic character of the Hill Historic District. Now, a restoration and rehabilitation award goes to owner Bill Gray in recognition of his longtime commitment to restoring the house at 488 Holly Avenue back to its 1896 Georgian Revival style splendor. And also to Carl T. Gray in recognition of his thoughtful design and attention to detail restoring the house at 488 Holly Avenue. And also to Calpin Construction to Carrington New Look Painting for their skillful craftsmanship and creativity for restoring the house at 488 Holly Avenue back to its 1896 Georgian Revival style splendor. Congratulations.
The porch and then the house exterior turned out so well because of these people here. And we're all very proud of it.
And I should also add, you may be wondering why I'm introducing so many of them. It's because they're all in Ward 1. So. The next one here, not long ago, 929 Edmund was a condemned property in St. Paul's historic Frogtown neighborhood. The Greater Frogtown Community Development Corporation, or GFCDC, came to its rescue and transformed this single-family home, renovating it into a beautiful house a family would be proud to live in. In addition to maintaining the exterior features that are characteristic of the neighborhood, GFCDC preserved much of the house's original interior, including woodwork, windows, and flooring. This project is an example of numerous home renovations that GFCDC had completed in the Frogtown neighborhood. Their ongoing efforts focus on preserving the character of these homes, many of which are approximately 100 years old. GFCDC has worked to improve the housing stock in St. Paul for the last 20 years, successfully raising more than $60 million to improve the housing stock for low-income families. In the process, GFCDC has collaborated with other entities that can bring additional resources to the projects, such as the United States Green Building Council, the Minnesota chapter, Goodwill Easter Seals Construction Training Program, St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, the City of St. Paul, Minnesota Housing, Habitat for Humanity, and Project for Pride in Living. Now, a well-deserved rehab award goes to Greater Frogtown Community Development Corporation in recognition of their commitment to rescue and rehabilitate the house at 929 Edmund Avenue while maintaining its historic character. Come on up.
We are very honored. Since this project has been completed, Greater Frogtown CDC has merged with another organization that has been around for 30 years, Community Neighborhood Housing Services, and our new name is NeighborWorks Home Partners. And on behalf of our board and our staff, and specifically our development staff, which is Patty Lammers, Jill Henriksen, and myself, we want to thank you for this recognition on this project. We wouldn't have been we wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of our partners, which USGBC, Minnesota chapter, our contractor, Nellis Builders, and the support of the City of St. Paul through the CIB process. Those funds were critical in making this project happen. So thank you for your support and your recognition.
I'm John Manillo. I'm former chair of the HPC in the old days. Currently, I'm the chair of the Lowertown Future Fund. The revival of Lowertown neighborhood is one of St. Paul's greatest success stories. The Tao of urban rejuvenation, building a livable, creative urban village by Wei-Ming Lu, tells the story of the rebirth of Lowertown as a vibrant arts district and cyber village, now home to thousands of resident artists, entrepreneurs, historic architecture, and beautiful public spaces. When Wei-Ming began his work on the Lowertown Redevelopment Corporation in the 70s, Lowertown was a series of neglected blocks of abandoned warehouses, a condition in so many inner cities during that time. Today, after leveraging millions in private and public dollars, Lowertown is a thriving, growing community filled with creative energy and economic opportunity. The story of Lowertown's transformation is accounted for in this comprehensive, well-written, graphically engaging, and beautifully illustrated book. Wei-Ming Lu and the Lowertown Redevelopment Corporation set the stage for the vibrant community we see today, and Lowertown has a bright future thanks to the strong foundation built by Wei-Ming's leadership and others over the past 40 years. While Wei-Ming is very humble about his role in all of this, he had a vision, and along with patience and discipline, he always stayed the course. Lowertown would not be what it is today without him. Thank you, Wei-Ming, for that, and thank you for continuing to be helpful in Lowertown. Thanks. A Community Education Award goes to Wei-Ming Lu in recognition of his commitment in authoring The Tao of Urban Rejuvenation, which documents Lowertown's rebirth as an urban village. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this award. And Lowertown is a public-private partnership, as some of you described. It involved many, many people. No one is in absolute control. So much of this have to be negotiated and settled, and we could have lost the depot, could have been destroyed, but we fought one battle after another. We could have, all the artists could be chased away, like so many redevelopment, but we were fortunate, we have many partners. I have so many partners that if I ask them to come up here, it would take off the whole stage and more. And actually, many of them are right in this building. Councilman Thune, actually John helped so much also, and also Carol Carey is one of the people who helped so much working together to create the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, become an incredible place. So many of these people that deserve the recognition, and I'm just one of the small guy that really is so fortunate to have the chance. But it's important to, on the other hand, that so many of these public-private partnerships failed because there was more competition than collaboration, and that people are not really willing to collaborate. And so, such a challenge for artists, for poor, to try to do something. This is why when I was asked to write this book, I thought it is important to write this book, to share, so that people can fight their own battle and to look at the future, to look at not just today, but look at the future. And this is why I'm glad Preservation Alliance Minnesota is doing the distribution. I wasn't doing this for money. Everything that I earned from this book will be contributed to preservation and arts and other. And I think this is something that worthy of doing. And I've been asked to speak, and the Institute of Advanced Study has a complete tape of when I spoke. And when McKnight found this book, they're excited, asked me to speak. I spoke. They immediately put my remarks on their website. I'm just trying to let you know this so-called program-related investment, this is new way of foundation putting it on it. McKnight is very interested in doing more of this. So anyway, I just want to share this kind of experience to make sure that can really empower people to build their own community. And thank you so much for the recognition of all these people's effort.
Well, I'm back to present a stewardship award, and this one is for the Hamlin Church United Methodist. This is near and dear to me as it's in my neighborhood of 16 years. Built from 1926 to 1928, Hamlin Church United Methodist is a Bedford limestone building in the Gothic Revival style. Its original architects and contractors were members of the congregation. The church featured pointed arches, steeply pitched gables, and an 80-foot high steeple. And it truly is a landmark in the neighborhood. No matter where you are in Hamlin Midway, the church is visible. Of course, I lost my place. The church's physical integrity remains remarkably intact due to the congregation's dedication to its preservation. Maintaining such a large and beautiful structure is a challenge and requires diligent stewardship. Fortunately, Hamlin Church United Methodist has several dedicated church committees to see all the work involved. The largest active group, the Hamlin Church Women, began this by nominating the other committees and their dedication to the church. They supported the roles of the Archives Committee, the Board of Trustees, and the Church Council, who have all gone a long way beyond the basic requirements for maintaining the building. Church committees and leadership sought state legacy grant funding to do a critically needed conditions report. Completed just last year by McDonald and Mack, it outlines short-term and long-term building improvements. Efforts are already underway, and the slate roof was recently replaced. To qualify for the legacy grant, the church first sought listing of the building to the National Register of Historic Places in 2012. With so much accomplished, the Hamlin Church United Methodist committees might be tempted to sit back and relax for a while. Instead, members are now working to ensure that the preservation work takes energy conservation into consideration, and church trustees have stepped up efforts to work on endowments and other ways to finance future improvements. So this year's Stewardship Award goes to Hamlin Church United Methodist in recognition of their ongoing commitment and leadership, ensuring Hamlin Church United Methodist is preserved and maintained as a neighborhood landmark. Congratulations.
You coming tomorrow night?
I have to be here.
I am the church historian at Hamlin Church. My name is Mary Bakeman, and we are honored to get this award. I want to point out, though, that the real work of what goes on in a church doesn't belong to the Archives Committee. We're the documenters, and in effect, we're the cheerleaders to make sure that things get done. And so I brought Roger Greiling, who is a member of our Board of Trustees, and the rest of the people here are on my History Committee, and we are, in fact, still working hard to do preservation work, and invite you all to come and see us sometime.
I'm going to take just a little bit of liberties since I'm old, and this is my last year on the City Council, and I just wanted to thank all of you for the years and years and years of support for historic preservation that I've seen out of 20 of the last 26 years. Back in the early 70s, I was a young architecture student from Fargo, actually living out on a farm in North Dakota. And one of our first field trips as young AIA members was to St. Paul. and I fell in love with Lower Town. I fell in love with the numerous tours that John Hughes took me on in a sort of an intoxicated state, walking through neighborhoods in the middle of the night, like Irvine Park, where I wound up living. But the changes that I've seen over all these years have been so great, and really it's because of historic preservation. It wasn't because of ballparks, it wasn't because of even hockey, which I love. It was really the result of hard workers and people with a vision like you, who saw that we should keep our historic buildings, preserve our historic neighborhoods, and now as we've repurposed so many of the historic properties downtown, St. Paul's got a great future, and I'm sure after I'm long gone, this city will still prosper and be a great one because of you. So thank you very much. Now, Riverview Elementary School, 160 Isabel Street East. The St. Paul School District building, this one, had been closed for 3 years due to declining enrollment. In 2012, changing demographics prompted the school district to reopen the facilities of pre-kindergarten through fifth grade program. The building, a 3-story facility constructed in 1928, was structurally sound but had numerous issues ranging from obsolete mechanical and electrical systems to building code violations and accessibility challenges. In addition, several past renovations had compromised the school's functionality. 292 Design Group worked with the district to make the building modifications that would accommodate the new program while retaining the original features of the building, including the exterior brick, interior woodwork, and terrazzo floors. The project returned general spaces to their original use, including the gymnasium and auditorium, and on the exterior, original window locations that had been bricked over were reopened, and the main entry was identified with the addition of a canopy pergola. The site was enhanced with new landscaping and improved site circulation for both pedestrians and vehicles. By investing in this 80-year-old facility, the St. Paul Public Schools made a commitment to the neighborhood that had a positive impact in the community. While respecting its original character, the building was updated, making it a viable school for years to come. So, a Restoration and Rehabilitation Award goes to the St. Paul Public Schools in recognition of their commitment in reopening and rehabilitating the 1928 Riverview Elementary School on St. Paul's West Side, and to the 292 Design Group in recognition of their thoughtful design for rehabilitating the 1928 Riverview Elementary School and bringing back a West Side treasure, and to George F. Cook Construction Company in recognition of their skillful craftsmanship and attention to detail rehabilitating the 1928 Riverview Elementary School. Thank you.
I'm just going to give a really brief intro to this, just to say that as an architect and rabid preservationist myself, as some of you know, I am just so proud to work for a district that not only promotes 21st century learning, but also values the past, especially in our historic structures, and the fact that it contains so many stories and just echoes of the history of all the citizens around that have gone through its halls, and values that as something to be cherished in the community and not bulldozed for something bigger and different. So with that, I'm going to let the architects who actually did the amazing work on it come to speak, as well as the principal, Melissa Rivera, who's here with us tonight.
I'll just make a brief comment. We're very honored to receive this award from the HPC and AIA St. Paul. You know, it's always exciting to work on these projects as an architect, but the credit really does go to the St. Paul Public Schools. As he said, they have really had a commitment not only to the building and investment in that building, but really an investment in the neighborhood and to the community at large. So with that, we've been very proud to be a part of that project, and also to have a wonderful contractor like George F. Cook Construction, who really knows how to work on old buildings and did a fabulous job for us.
Hi, good evening, buenas noches. My name is Melissa Rivera, and I'm the proud principal of Riverview Elementary. I just want to say that my students, before moving to the new building, they were so afraid. They thought, are we going to see bats? Because what they remember were things of the story. This is a school that houses 3rd and 4th generation of Latino students in that building, and parents, great-grandparents went to that school in 1929 when they were children themselves. So I've had some of those grandparents and great-grandparents visit the new school and tour it, and it is amazing the transformation, the light that has brought back into that building is so amazing. 25 years ago, I used to be a teacher assistant, and I went to that building, and it was screeching and dark, and it's beautiful. So we thank you for the award, and thank you for the board, and Valeria Silva Superintendent Silva had the vision of saying, yes, we're going to open that building up. So thank you.
900 West 7th Street. The SCHMIT Brewery had sat vacant for a decade. This landmark of the West End fell into disrepair and suffered inappropriate remodels, to say the least, and the weather. With the oldest section of the brewery nearly 160 years old, the neighborhood knew and in many cases were part of the history and understood the value of this icon on the skyline. Let's just say that people were patient and persistent. I'll call it serendipity, but at this very event several years ago, is it 5 years ago maybe, a connection was made. Add another 5 years of planning, design, and rehabilitation, and the SCHMIT Artist Lofts opened as an affordable live-work housing development. The project combined historic preservation, sustainability, and had to overcome numerous challenges. Non-historic additions were removed, revealing historic facades, and infilling openings once again allowed light into spaces that were once industrial and now residential. The SCHMIT Artist Lofts are unique, and the artists have made it their home for many years to come. Artists are often key players in turning dormant buildings and historic neighborhoods into vibrant cultural hubs. SCHMIT Artist Lofts have been a catalyst for continued growth and activity in St. Paul. Since its 2014 opening, the SCHMIT Artist Lofts have significantly increased the number of people living and working in the surrounding West 7th Street neighborhood and supported neighboring restaurants and businesses. The site hosted its first annual German Fest last summer. The SCHMIT sign was relit for the first time at that celebration, and this familiar icon once again lends a sense of identity to the neighborhood. Already recognized on a national level with a Timmy Award for the most innovative adaptive reuse, and the state level with the Minnesota Preservation Award, this year's St. Paul Adaptive Reuse Award rightfully goes to Dominium in recognition of their commitment and tenacity to reuse the SCHMIT Brewery bottling and brew houses, ensuring a sensitive rehabilitation into artist lofts. And to the BKV Group in recognition of their creative design and engineering solutions for the SCHMIT Brewery bottling and brew houses. And to Weiss Builders in recognition of their craftsmanship and engineering expertise adapting the SCHMIT Brewery bottling and brew houses. And to American Masonry Restoration, Midwest Window and Door, Ramsey Excavating Company, Gresser Concrete and Masonry, Minuti Ogle Contractors, a KHS&S venture, Major Mechanical Inc., Medina Electrical Inc., in recognition of their expertise and craftsmanship adapting the SCHMIT Brewery bottling and brew houses. Thank you very much and congratulations.
I guess you guys get to listen to me to finish up. I started Dominium almost 10 years ago, and very early on in my career, I took a tour through the SCHMIT Brewery project. It was April of '07, and it was cold and dark and damp and just a horrible place to walk through. Great neighborhood, but the building just needed a lot of work. And without the support of the city and Councilmember Thune in particular, and I don't know how many cups of coffee we shared over many mornings trying to brainstorm how we can figure this one out, we were able to work with the city and thank them. Without them, there's no way this would have been ever possible. And I hope I can have an opportunity to do something as cool as this again. But I'm afraid this is probably the culmination of my career in working on such a cool project. And you know, the thankless hours that Amy and Christine and all the HPC staff have to work on these different amendments and applications that everyone goes through, it really goes unthanked a lot of times. And I just want to give them a shout out and a clap for all that they do to make this possible. And Mr. Dana mentioned partnerships. There's too long of a list, both on the financing side, on the construction side, on the design, on figuring out how we basically create a building that has 20-some different additions, none of the floor plates align. How do we make that housing? The different partners that helped us make that possible is really humbling, and I just couldn't be more happy to be here in front of you all and accept the award. And again, just thank you, and everyone, I guess, have a great night. I'm sure someone will finish up, but thank you.
Congratulations, and one last applause for all the award recipients. This really is about you and about the contribution that you make to the community. It's important. I'm grateful to you for mentioning staff and the critical role that they play and the professionalism that they bring to what we're committed to doing. So one last round of applause for everyone.